Hey everyone, and thanks for watching. Today we're going to be going over getting started with the B2B Commerce LWR template. So today we're going to be going over what is LWR. We're going to be going over the LWR commerce specific components and pages and the template you get with this. And we'll talk a little bit about migration too. So if you're a current B2B Commerce customer and you're using the Aura template or the existing one, and you're looking for tidbits on how to actually migrate to the LWR template and what do you actually need to think about, this is the perfect video for you. So stay tuned. We're going to be covering that, and we're going to do a page-by-page review of some of the core pages that you use inside of the commerce application. So let's get right into it. So let's start with the question of what actually is LWR. Well, LWR stands for Lightning Web Runtime. And this is the next generation of Experience Cloud templates that are being produced by Salesforce. And the whole intent and purpose behind this LWR initiative here is to provide better flexibility and better speed, meaning faster sites, than we've had in the past with our Aura-based templates. Now, this happens through a couple of different methods here, but one of the main ones is that the publishing and compiling process is different. In the past, Aura sites are dynamically loaded every single time. So every time you hit the page, it needs to basically compile that page, pull the information from Salesforce, render it all together, and it shows you the information, right? That's kind of the typical model of Aura. With LWR, you are statically building the site at publish time and then dynamically loading the data when you go to the page, which means that a lot of the load of compiling the information is done at publishing time. However, that means a little bit different interaction when you're going through the developing life cycle. So we will talk about that in a little bit about what you can and can't do with LWR versus what you can do with Aura-based templates. So one of the first things we should call out here is what are some of the main differences between Aura and LWR, where I thought it would be nice to kind of show the two storefronts here. So up to this point, we've done a lot of development on the B2B Aura-based. Now we're going to start doing more on the B2B LWR because as of spring 23, we're starting to shift focus to LWR, meaning Salesforce is starting to shift focus there, and most of the development and enhancements are going to be happening on that template. But there are still gaps that we will cover later on that are key to know here. But one of the main differences here with the B2B Aura and LWR is Aura allows you to use Aura components and the LWC components. Now, if you've been building your storefront over the last couple of years, you've probably been building most of yours on Lightning Web Components. So the transition from an Aura-based storefront and a LWR storefront isn't probably going to be too massive for you, but we will talk about migration paths here. But that's one of the key differences here that you should understand. Now, I know this is kind of a laundry list here, but we'll kind of poke through this here real quick, and then we'll actually show some of this in the actual storefront as well. But I mentioned performance, so the LWR storefront is going to be significantly faster for everyone, which is going to be great for the B2C template that we have, and even our B2B template will start to see some performance increases. One of the key differences here, though, in the publishing lifecycle is that you must publish your storefront every time you make a change to a custom component. So in the past, when you were on an Aura-based storefront and you built a Lightning Web component and you put it on the page and you published it, anytime you made a change to that Lightning Web component, it would automatically reflect on the storefront without you having to go and republish anything. That is now no longer going to work on LWR templates because, as I mentioned before, they're statically built, meaning that what you're going to see on the storefront isn't going to change until you republish it with that new updated code. So that's a key difference here. So if you're going through a development lifecycle and you're wondering why maybe your component isn't updating on an LWR template, remember to go and publish that storefront again. Next one is there's some key differences with CSS and how those CSS are used. We'll cover this more probably in a separate video in the future, but there are some differences in how to actually use CSS throughout the site. This is built closer to CMS, and Salesforce CMS 2.0 is coming out here pretty soon, and I know a lot of synergies are going to happen between the two capabilities. Another thing to mention is that not all the standard components in B2B Commerce and even in General Experience Cloud are in LWR yet. So you will want to check, do I have the components I need to use my storefront? Data bindings are something that are going to be really important inside of the storefront, and it really allows you some flexibility on what you show to the users and some really easy ways to transfer data between components and subcomponents. And one of the last ones to call out here is the page structures are a little bit different. So when we get into the actual Experience Cloud site, you'll notice that we don't have some of the list detail related list pages that we've been so used to in the Aura-based template. So from a commerce perspective, there are a couple of gaps as of April 2023, which is when this video is being created. And I know that there is work yet going on right now to cover these gaps over the next couple of releases. So if you're watching this, in a couple of months from now, you might want to check the current availability of these components, which I'll pull up a site here in one moment. But wish lists are currently not available. However, those are coming out in the next release, but only with a single wish list, not multiple. The footer right now is fixed, so it's on the page. You can't remove it. Header scroll, some of the components are showing up as smaller versions. Toast messages don't work in LWR, so you do need to build some custom components for the toast message, and then product sets aren't currently available either. So just a couple of things to know going into it. So a lot of the core functionality is there, and a fully functioning site can be built, but there are a couple of limitations around that. So I'll put this link down in the description here, but there is a link that is for the LWR template limitations. And as you scroll down here, you can see that there is a decent amount of limitations and unsupported features from the Aura to LWR. So it will be really important for you to go through here and understand, which ones you need, if any of these. So just remember to take a peek at this before you actually go and start building. You will probably want to click into some of the base components too, because some of the base components like file upload and toast messages, as I mentioned before, are not currently supported on LWR. So take a look at both of those links, and hopefully that will kind of help you understand what you can and can't do in the storefront currently. So if you're watching this with the intent to go and actually follow along with me or play around with this new template, you're probably wondering, well, how do I actually get access to it? Well, luckily for us, it is available right now. It is available in all new instances provisioned. So if you go to the standard Salesforce Developer Edition sign up form and you create a new org right now, you will be able to go in there and go through the install steps and set up your instance and be able to deploy a new LWR-based template. If you're looking for more than just setting up a new instance to try to understand what the features are, and you actually have an existing Aura-based template, and you're looking for what does it take to actually move from one to another, well, there is a little bit of documentation around this on the Salesforce help page. But I thought I'd sum it up here, and then we can go over there and take a look in a minute. The first step is you need to validate what standard components you're planning on using. And as I mentioned previously in this video, there are a couple that are gaps right now. So my suggestion is step one is validate that you have all the components inside of the storefront to actually continue or plan on actually migrating over. The second one here is if you're using any Aura-based components, you do need to look at converting those Aura components into Lightning Web components. Now that process might not take an immense amount of time depending on how it's built, but it will take a little bit of effort at the very least, if not more effort, to actually do that migration work. Third is the checkout. Checkout is very different with the LWR template versus the Aura-based one. So I have a couple of videos on checkout in LWR, and we'll do more of them. But you will want to look at your checkout because the Aura-based flow checkout does not work in LWR. So there is going to be a transition there that you will need to consider. And the fourth one is the mapping of the data. Luckily, this is all built on the same platform, so you don't need to re-import your products or anything, but you will have to reassociate it to the new store. So we'll talk through a little bit more about that in future videos on the data mapping there. But it's all the stuff you are used to with categories and entitlements and price books, but all of that will need to be migrated over. And lastly, before we actually jump in and get into the meat of it here, I thought I'd give you an example. On the top section here, you have your standard B2B Aura template with the header that we're all used to seeing, and you can see all the different components that are visible on that. On the bottom here, we have our B2B LWR template. So you can see even the navigation on the home page and across all the pages actually are quite different. So it will be a good exercise to go through and compare what you currently have to what you plan on using. And that's one of the reasons why we have this video. We're going to go through a couple of the key pages and show the difference in components and layouts to help the understanding of this in the community. All right, we're back in our Salesforce Mojo instance, and the first thing we're going to do before we can actually do anything else in comparing is we need to create a new storefront. So we're going to click over into Getting Started, and then we'll click Create a Store, and we'll be able to see in our instance here that we have a new template that is available for us, and it's called the B2B Commerce LWR template. So let's go ahead and click that, and we'll click Getting Started here, and we'll go ahead and put Tiny Homes LWR, and let's actually make this Tiny Homes B2B so it's pretty clear. Let me just actually flip this around so we keep the same naming convention. And we'll do Tiny Homes B2B LWR. That's going to be a little bit of a long extension here, but it's going to be really clear about exactly what we're doing with it. So we'll go ahead and click Create, and once this is done loading, we'll hop back in here and we'll start showing some of the comparison. So while our new site is getting provisioned, I thought it would be good to do a quick overview of what we're going to be reviewing here. Now, what plan is to just do a quick overview of components and pages. However, if you are watching this video and you want more detail about some of the components or features or functionality, feel free to put that in the comments, and I'm happy to go back and do more in-depth review of this. But we're planning on going through the home page and some of the details of it, as I mentioned, the category page, the product page, and the cart page. Now, those are the four main pages in my opinion, outside of the checkout process here, which we will cover separately. But we'll be going through each one of these pages in more detail in just one second. All right, we have our site up now. And so the plan here is we're going to go through each one of these pages and just do a quick overview of just some of the differences in structure and some of the components that are available, because some things have changed. And we'll plan on doing the home page, the product page, the category page, the cart page, and we'll reserve most of the checkout stuff for some of the other videos we're going to do here in the future. So let's start with the home page. Home page here, as you can see, starting off looks quite a bit different here. We have kind of an edge-to-edge display here with a little bit different top header section. You can see on the header right here we have a single line header, whereas in the previous Aura-based template we had a kind of a two-fold header where the top section was the search bar and the logo and some of the profile information, and then it dropped down to do all of the navigation links underneath it. But now out of the box we have a single line here, which gives you a little bit of customization on kind of color palette that we could set up over here in the theming section. So we have a little bit of a capability to do some of this over here. However, there's a very limited control on the header outside of that. So inside of each one of these components, we can come in and we could do our navigation changes here. We could do some of the search bar modifications as well. But outside of that, we really can't drop new sections in this commerce header. So overall, thoughts and rating on this first section is that a step in the right direction, gives us a single line, which is really helpful, good probably for most B2B implementations. However, there are some use cases that I've seen that still requires you to overhaul this or create your own. So that's one of the first ones here. And then we have our typical hero banner, which gives you the same type of capability that we're used to on the Aura-based template. And then down below, we have the commerce footer here, which right now really gives us no control over it outside of actually diving into each one of these components and doing a little bit of modification on that. We can put new components in this section to a limited degree, but right now, actually, curiously enough, we can't go in and just remove this component from this. We'd have to kind of override the template and make some changes that way. So that's a little bit of a good to know as far as what you can change down there. Then as far as the commerce components that can be used on the home page, you have these 6 components. Now, if you wanted to see everything, you could go over into settings and then you could click show all components. And what this will do is it'll open up all the components. But by default, it's filtered to what is available on the page or what is suggested on the page. by whoever actually created these components, whether it's Salesforce or a third party. So we could put in our navigation list menu, which is up here. We could put in an order list, and we could put in shop by category and top sellers. So if we wanted to come down to this section right here, you can see that we're still getting a couple of little weird ones down here where the component only shows on the left hand side, as you saw it pop up there. But we could pull in, top sellers right here, and it's going to stay over here on this little tiny one. But you could give it top seller categories and fill this information in. All the documentation for that is on the help page in the B2B Commerce section. So you can do that. So that's a little bit of an overview on the home page. I'd say overall going in the right direction, although we still see some use cases to customize it to really give the brand the look and feel they're looking for. All right, next one up is the category page. Now, category page has the same header and footer, so I'll skip over that moving forward now. But you can see that this category page is actually quite a bit different than the previous category page in the Aura template. If we go back to our Aura template and look at that, you will be able to see that it's really a single component, and you'll have some customization inside of each one of the sections to modify, look and feel. But you really couldn't say, well, I really don't want to filter, or I want the filter over here instead. With this category page, we do have that capability. So, if we didn't want the filter, we could close that over here, or we could move it to the right-hand side. So we could control some of that with a new section and some of that capability. But this gives you the flexibility to drop in, expressions into text blocks. So, we're dropping in items here. In this case, we have the results pane right here. But then you can see that we have a little bit of control over the result display, as we typically do with the fields and size of text and all that. But then we actually have like the sort menu customized, or not, I should say, broken out on the right hand side here, along with the breadcrumbs and some text on the left hand side. And then we could continue to modify this to make it a little more componentized. So if we wanted to drop in some more components in here or break that out, we could. So I'd say this one has made quite a bit of progress since the Aura template, just in componentization, especially if you just need to modify one section of it. You don't have to replace the entire component. This one does have more capability to bring in more components out of the box. So you have like the breadcrumbs that I showed you, the filters. You could drop in a category banner at the top, just like you have in the Aura one if you wanted a picture to show at the very top. So you definitely have some of that flexibility there as well. So here we are on the product page. Similar look and feel as the existing one, although this one is kind of a full width, as the other one was kind of a fraction of the entire width of the website. But on this one, we have a very similar look and feel and even components. We have our image component over here. We have our headers and attachments and the pricing and all that fun stuff. I will note that there is still an ongoing issue happening with a production that is making each of the components super tiny. So you can see like pricing variations actually here. However, it's like minimized on the left-hand side. But that one is here, which will show you the drop downs if you're using variations. But overall, it's been broken out a little bit more, just like the category one. I will say not to the fullest extent yet, but you still have the ability to kind of break out each one of these sections here, and then a little bit of control over the quantity and pricing here. You have some separation of this if you wanted to drop in just a quantity selector right here by itself. You could start to separate out pieces of those. And this one has a little bit different controls than the bundled one. All right, here we are on the cart page, and I will say this is one of the ones that I've been super happy about, some of the changes here. I think overall it's given you a lot of flexibility in how to handle this. So you have a master cart, a wrapper component here, and then you have a ton of smaller components inside of it that give you areas to actually drop in the content that you need. So you have a full section up here that's all about the empty state. And then you have kind of an intermediate state, and then you have your actual, what does this look like state when there's items in it with some really nice badges and some pills here, like the save down here, that give you a nice little UI. Plus the ability on the right-hand side to show all of the, totals, subtotals, taxes, promotions, totals, etc., with the capability to drop in the checkout button right here. And then as before, you have a lot of the same type of components here. We have the cart badge, you have your promotion section and coupons if you wanted to add that over on the right-hand side. But I feel like this page has overall turned out to really have a nice look and feel in this LWR version. All right, so just to give you a bonus here, we're gonna go to My Profile. This is one that I think I'm the most excited for because it has some pretty cool feature enhancements here. We have our typical profile and password stuff, which is laid out a lot better, I think, but we have addresses down here, which actually gives you the ability to see shipping and billing address with the ability to add address here by default, which we couldn't do with the Aura-based one. You had to make your own custom components or pages to really facilitate that, but now you can see a lot of detail very easily here. So this I think will be a really good one for this template moving forward. So I know I mentioned earlier in the video that I'd be covering some of the data aspects of this in a future video, which I will in more depth if you guys tell me that's what you want to hear, because this is all about helping out the community and what's the pain points here. But as you're thinking about migrating, you're going to need to consider how to actually get my data over from an Aura template, if that's what you're using, into this LWR template. So this piece is for those of you who already have a storefront working and you're trying to convert that over. As I mentioned, just really briefly, all the data is exactly the same, right? So this LWR is really about the template, the front end. So from a back-end perspective, all your products can stay the same, but you can notice as you go into categories and as you go into your products, and this is the site I just created a little bit ago, it's not going to have anything in it. And you can even see its default creating a bunch of the pieces that it actually needs, like price books and entitlements and buyer groups. It'll automatically create some of those stock for me as I go into these workspaces. But you don't need to feel like you need to recreate everything. You can remap a lot of it. So for instance, I know for a fact in this instance that I have more products than 0 in there. So if I really wanted to go and I wanted to map this front door to that new storefront, I could do that through getting it to the right category. So right now you can see this front door is actually on 2 storefronts, both of them called products, so kind of hard to tell there. But then we could map this to a new entitlement policy. And you can see that by default I get the all access for tiny homes LWR entitlement policy. So if I were to click save here, it would now be associated to that new storefront. I need to go to the price books and categories, of course. But you would be able to start to see that on your products. So really when you're thinking about migration from a data perspective, it's all about creating new records for the linking objects. So the core objects like products, for instance, you will not need to recreate, but you will need to create the linking objects like the entitlement policy, junction records, and everything else around it to properly set up your site. And once you've done that, then you'll be able to go through the same process of, doing the search index and activating. But where you're really thinking about migration from Aura to LWR, most of this is going to be on the front end, right? Because that's where the template differences come in. There will be some data work, as I mentioned, but it will be much more minor than the front end work. All right, and that's it for getting started with the B2B Commerce LWR templates. Hopefully this was a helpful introduction into the new LWR templates. Give us a like and put any comments if you have any questions or things you want us to focus in on more. And thanks for watching.